All right, everybody, welcome in to Load the Box. I'm your host, Jordan Hawthorne. I am joined, as always, by the marvelous and the wonderful Jack H. Day. Really quickly, before I send it on over to Jack, make sure that you're following the show at LTB Vikings. Make sure you're following Jack, who is that way, at Jack_H_Day, and then myself at JHawthorne16, and you can see our Twitter handles up in the corners of the screen and everything. And then the show's Twitter will be coming along on the little ticker there at the bottom. Golly, this loss probably helped me more than it helped most Vikings fans because I'm surrounded by Bengals fans in every facet of my life. So, I'm living it every day, just constantly getting it. But I don't know, Jack. How was week one for you?
It was frustrating. I think that's the the nicest way I can put it is just it was frustrating, slightly embarrassing. I don't know if it comes down to, hey, maybe Vikings fans and the rest of the NFL, everyone analyzing the NFL was just kind of expecting Cincinnati to not be good. Maybe they have a little bit more talent. I mean, Jamar Chase, I know Patrick Peterson had a good game, but did you see the video of Jamar Chase where he had him spinning around in circles? And then Jamar Chase also made Bashaud Breeland look like he hasn't even played in the NFL. And it was a weird game because there were just several things throughout training camp. It was like Jamar Chase, he forgot how to catch a football. And it's like, that seems really odd when Jamar Chase was, I mean, coming out of LSU after that 2019 season that they had that was so special. Jamar Chase was the guy. It was not Justin Jefferson. They were looking at Jamar Chase as the next best wide receiver in the NFL, and he looked the part on Sunday. And the Vikings, frankly, I mean, they didn't show up at all whatsoever in the first half, and then when they decided to show up, it was a little bit too late, and then they just go out and do it in like typical Minnesota sports fashion. They just they give you hope that you're there, and then at the last second, it just gets taken away like that with the Dalvin Cook fumble. I'm not really here to sit and talk if that was a fumble or not. Dalvin Cook said it in his press conference today. It's a 50-50 call. What it was called on the field, it was hard to overturn that. I know there were some good angles where it looked like his butt was on the ground, but the more of the story is don't fumble the football, and that doesn't happen at all. So it was, like I said, frustrating. I know a lot of Minnesota is frustrated, and I think it's going to be frustrating for the next couple of weeks too, because the schedule it does not get easier for the next 3 weeks.
Yeah, the schedule, and we were texting during the game and even after the game about how the potential to start 0-4 is real. It's 100%. It is it's I wouldn't say likely, but I'm gonna say this: the Vikings will be underdogs in each of the next 3 games. I think that's a fair bet to say. But not looking too far ahead, I don't want to, look at Seattle and Cleveland, but, we'll talk about Arizona later in the show. But staying on this Cincinnati game, of course, there's some stats down there on the bottom. The Vikings offense, to me, seemed like the problem here. It did seem like, and I told you, Jack, at as we were literally just about to go on air, I used some choice language about Kubiak's play calling, and I don't know if that's Mike Zimmer being in his ear, or if that's just Kubiak being a first time play caller, maybe wanting to play it safe, not do anything that's going to lose the game for his head coach. I don't know what the case is. All I know is it is really disappointing to see the offense just be so conservative and so, if they throw the ball, they throw it 5 yards. It's 3rd and 7, they throw it 2 yards and hope the guy goes and gets it. And especially whenever you're playing the Bengals offense with a guy like Jamar Chase, who I had a little, feel-good moment because I started Jamar Chase in my fantasy league. So, I did benefit from him, touching Bashaud Breeland a few times, but just the offense for the Vikings, to see Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow out there, taking their shots, throwing the ball 10, 15, 20 yards down the field on a regular basis. And then every time we got the ball, it felt like it was run, false start, run, holding, run. Now it's 3rd and 17, and then we would throw the ball 5 yards down the field. And the offense continually shot themselves in the foot. The offense just it looked really bad. I didn't love the play calling. I didn't love the discipline that just wasn't there. And to me, this game is 100%. I'm looking at the offense. I know there's stuff we can talk about on the defense, and we will. But Jack, give me your takeaways from the offense. What you think will happen versus what you want to see happen with the offense, and who are you pointing the finger at this week?
Yeah, I think what I want to see, I hear what you're saying with the Clint Kubiak stuff, because when you have 20 yards to go to get to that first down marker and you hand the ball off, it's frustrating as a fan to see that. However, I want to see what Clint Kubiak can do if he doesn't have 3,054 false starts or whatever the number was. Obviously, that's not accurate, but it was absurd. Like, they just came out and CJ Ham, a guy that I don't know, his name is not regularly brought up for penalties. I know he's not on the field as much as some of the other guys, but he had 2 false starts. It seemed like everyone on the offensive line either had a false start or a holding. And it was frustrating to watch. It was not easy to watch by any means. And these guys that are supposed to be out there doing their jobs, and there's people on Facebook blaming this on Kirk, like the false start and stuff. It's like, I'm not going to blame that on Kirk, but this game, I've had this conversation already with several people. This game is pushing me towards the dark side of the spectrum on the Kirk Cousins world, because I've been an advocate for Kirk Cousins for the 3-4 years that he's been here now. And I've said this on air with you that this is his make or break year. I know the stats were there, and I've been an advocate for his stats. I still will say he's a good quarterback, but it's tough to watch when you see Kirk Cousins get pressure after holding onto the ball for 4 or 5 seconds, and then instead of rolling out to the right, trying to slip into a pot or slip into a gap within that pocket and try to deliver a strike, he just goes down. There was a play that happened with Garrett Bradbury. I think it was a play that got called back, actually, because I believe it was a play that Adam Thielen got absolutely tackled when the ball wasn't even thrown to him. But he just like fell over. And it's frustrating. What's frustrating to see when you're watching the Vikings and you've seen this year after year with Kirk Cousins is now we're starting to see the new era of quarterbacks come into the NFL. The Joe Burrows of the world, the Jalen Hurts, who, oh, by the way, you and I both wanted the Vikings to draft out of college. And then next week when we get into Kyler Murray, it's like all these guys can move. They all have like a different leadership ability that it just doesn't seem that Kirk Cousins, it doesn't seem like he has that. He doesn't have that edge that you and I have talked about so frequently on the show, that we want to see him come out. We want to see him doing the you like that stuff, but not forcing it. We want to see him come out and like naturally be a true leader.
But you know what the issue is, and I don't want to cut you off, but I'm all about let's get on this Kirk Cousins right now. I don't think he is, and again, this loss was not 100% Kirk Cousins' fault, but I do think you can point at some key plays that even a guy like Kellen Mond, if he's in the game, and I'm not calling for Kellen Mond to start over Cousins. I don't think he's ready. I think he needs a year, and then we might even be talking who are we drafting in the first round whenever we start 0-4 come, October time. But I don't think Cousins has that that passion in him for a 17-game schedule. I think that's something that comes out 1 or 2 times a year, and the rest of the time he does have to force it, and it is inauthentic. Not to mention, not just the passion that I don't think, that I think he lacks at times. It's also like, I rewatched the game just before we went on the air. I watched the NFL Game Pass, like half an hour version of the game. I counted 2 sacks that any other quarterback not named like Cousins, Brady, or Roethlisberger, they don't get sacked in those situations. It's just 2 times where he gets bull rushed and he's not athletic enough to get, out of a bull rush situation and run away from it. And so he ends up going down from it. It's just frustrating to have that statue of a quarterback. And that's my 2 cents on the Cousins thing. I don't think it was his fault. He threw a couple of bad balls. When the money was on the line, though, he did take us down the field. He got us into field goal range. I'll give him credit there. But I agree with you, man. He has to have that fire. And after this many years, I don't think it's there.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Like I've said this before, I think he is one of the more talented quarterbacks in the NFL. We just don't see it consistently, and he doesn't have that edge to him. I don't know if you saw this video or not, and I hate bringing this up because I shouldn't say I hate bringing it up because he has a soft spot in all of our hearts. But there's a video that was circulating on Twitter with Von Miller and Teddy Bridgewater talking on the sideline after they were up. And Von Miller, or maybe it was even before the game, but Von Miller went up to Teddy Bridgewater and said, hey man, that like those speeches that you do, like then I'm paraphrasing here. He's like, those speeches, they matter. What you're doing matters. And he's like, I haven't seen this leadership here in Denver since 18 was here. And he's talking about Peyton Manning. He's comparing Peyton Manning's leadership to what Teddy Bridgewater has and what he has. And like, it's just a different mindset that guys like that have. And it's a struggle to watch a quarterback go out there and not have that factor where they want to win more than the fans in the stands want you to win. And that it's maybe that's not a thing that all quarterbacks have, but all the good ones have that. And I'm afraid that I was wrong on Kirk Cousins. I'm not going to say that what the Vikings did when they signed Kirk Cousins was wrong, because I think that was still the right decision. It was the best possible option at the time. But now we can go back and question, hey, was it the right decision to do that extension? And what's the future look like for the Vikings at the quarterback position? Because this team right now is going to look a lot different next year if they continue to lose football games, especially if they can continue to lose football games that they are supposed to win. And we could be talking Mike Zimmer's no longer here, potentially Rick Spielman, potentially Kirk Cousins. It could be a trifecta. All of them could potentially be gone. And it could be time for the Minnesota Vikings to rebuild. And I hate talking about this because we're a week into the season, and normally I have all this optimism inside of me, but just watching that game, it was like, I just felt numb watching it. It was like, okay, it's back. It's the same thing it's been. Nothing's changed. We had all this talent on defense, and they had their struggles on that side of the ball as well. But on offense, man, there was no rhythm, there was no discipline, and it was just frustrating to watch. And then when you get to watch Joe Burrow, who went up on that last play of the game, audibled at the line of scrimmage and decided, hey, I'm going to throw this instead of just hand it off. That kid hasn't even played, I don't know, what is it, 8 games in the NFL, and he was able to do that. Like, that is the leadership that you want at that position, and the Vikings just don't have that.
Yeah, it seems like, and this is classic overreaction. This is, yes. We can acknowledge that we're overreacting on this Wednesday. We had a few days to sit on it. We're still going to overreact, and we're probably going to demand everyone be fired after Sunday's game against Arizona. But it does feel like there might have been a missed opportunity. You extend Cousins, you extend Zimmer basically with Cousins, so you kind of put them on the same little clock together to get something done, or else everything's going down in flames. And now, it's a week into the season. I can't believe I'm even saying this guy's name right now. Eric Bieniemy's being rumored to be going to USC to take one of the top college jobs. So, like the Vikings fans, number one, like he is basically like he's like a backup quarterback. Everyone thinks he's the savior of the team. Eric Bieniemy might be going to coach the USC Trojans, and maybe we can do like a who was it? I think it was Kingsbury that like he took an OC job. Oh, he took a job at like USC, and then the Cardinals called him, and he was like, oh, yeah, I'll come coach for you guys instead. I'll go to the NFL. So maybe we can do that. I don't know. It's just Tom Day, I like what you said. I'm going to get to the chat really quick. Shannon Sparks did DeYonko says, love this, Mr. Jack Day. Shannon, thank you for tuning in. Nathan Nickel, big Bengals fan, says he's been waiting for this moment, and then he says, who day, with a lot of O's and a lot of Y's. He's definitely celebrating this win. And then Tom Day says, is there any chance that maybe, just maybe, the Bengals are that good? And that's a topic that I want to get into, specifically whenever we switch over to talking about the defensive side of the ball. Before we get into that, Tom, let me just really quickly, I do want to say there were some bright spots I saw on the offense, and I think it's mainly one bright spot. I think, just maybe, we have a wide receiver 3. KJ Osborne. Let me pull up the stats. I think he had 7 catches for 70. Oh, go ahead.
And just to tie this into that, do we have our QB2 who threw that sideline that he had in Justin Jefferson over Sean Mannion?
There you go. So, yeah, Justin Jefferson can come in if Cousins ever goes down. We don't have to worry about Mannion or Mond. But, yeah, KJ Osborne he had more catches and more yards than Justin Jefferson. Is he better than Justin Jefferson? Tune in next week to find out. But, no, legitimately, though, KJ Osborne, 7 catches, 76 yards. Cousins was looking his way a lot, and there was a key 4th down and around 5 late in the game. Had to have it, get into field goal range, get up, spike the ball, blah, blah, blah. You know the drill. Cousins went to KJ Osborne. It was not an easy catch. He was fully extended. It was basically a diving catch that he had to make on a slant, and he did it. So Really good job from KJ Osborne there. I think the Vikings do have the wide receiver 3, and I just bought the new Madden last night, and I was playing it this morning, and KJ Osborne's like a 62 overall on there, so hopefully he plays well enough that he's actually usable in that game so I can start playing with him. But yeah. Also the tight ends looked bad. I didn't like anything that I saw from the tight ends, including a few like holds or false starts, because everyone on the offense had a false start except for Cousins and maybe Cook. Jack, any closing statements on the offense before we flip sides of the ball?
No, I think I got most of my rant out on that side of the ball. I agree with you. I think KJ Osborne is a name that was brought up frequently throughout training camp, and it showed on Sunday that, hey, this kid can play. I think he had 7 catches, if I'm remembering correctly, and I think that's 7 more catches than he had all of last year already. So it's fun being able to see that. It sucks that the circumstances as to why we're seeing that is because Irv Smith Jr. is done for the year. But it's going to be interesting, and we're going to get into this when we talk about Arizona and stuff. But it just seems like this team, they just didn't show up. It was very clear on offense, and the undisciplined, like, I think we had the same conversation last year about discipline several times. And it was like, this can't be normal. Like, it's just because there's so many rookies it was more so on the defensive side of the ball. I was like, there's so many rookies. It's a Mike Zimmer led team. He's going to get it figured out. Here we are 1 week into the season, and I don't know if they figured it out. I don't know if this team is lost. I don't know what it is in that locker room that is so messy right now, but there is a lot that needs to get figured out if they want any chance at even competing in the next 3 games.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. Flipping sides of the ball and addressing Tom Day's saying, are the Bengals just that good? They might just be, and this isn't a Cincinnati Bengals show, but I will go ahead and throw this in there, and I won't tell my Bengals fans where it's at in the show. I'll make them look for it. I wanted to wait until later so they would watch the whole show, but the Bengals offense is kind of stacked. I mean, I know the line is subpar, and the Vikings got 5 sacks on Joe Burrow, but still, I mean, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, I didn't even say Jamar Chase, who's probably the best of all 3 of them. And then CJ Uzomah is like the tight end / fullback guy. They have a really good offense.
And Joe Mixon, if he can stay healthy, he's a baller too.
Yes.
Like, Joe Mixon's always been very, very good. It's just a matter if he can stay healthy, and if he stays healthy, there is a ton of firepower on that offense.
Absolutely. Well, and so again, living in Cincinnati, I do see a lot about the Bengals. And some local beat writers had been saying, look, the last 7 years, and I didn't know this, 7 straight years, the Bengals have used first-round picks on the offensive side of the ball. They have not went defense once. So they basically said, look, it's time for the Bengals to have like a top 5 offense. They can go 5-12. If they have a top, 10 offense, top 5 offense, and, they're scoring points and they're just losing shootouts, okay, we can start trying to fix the defense then. But, like, it's time to say that the offense is good. And the offense did look pretty solid in spurts. But I would also say that saying all those weapons, I do think the Vikings did a pretty solid job of minimalizing. I think I said that right, but I don't know. I'm going to get off of it. Minimalizing a lot of the Bengals' weapons. I know that they did have a couple of explosive plays, but definitely in overtime and the fourth quarter, maybe it was conservative play calling from the Bengals, but the Vikings' defense really started to step up towards the end of the game. I like what I saw from the defense, except for one thing, and I pointed it at Kubiak's play calling on the offense, and I said that was the big thing, that and the discipline, which, they kind of go hand in hand, but Bashad Breeland was getting picked on Sunday because it was every time they were throwing at him. They weren't picking a wide receiver. Jamar Chase had a touchdown catch over him. T. Higgins had, I think, 2 catches that put him inside the 5 against Bashad Breeland. He was getting toasted. He was getting embarrassed. It was a regular occurrence. And then he went to Twitter after the game saying, keep that same energy. So I hope he can bounce back. Is it time for Chris Boyd to step up and maybe start next to Pat Pete? Is it time to put Cameron the Needle Danslow back in there to see if maybe he can redeem himself? There's a lot of storylines going into week 2. Jack, what did you see out of this defense? And who are you putting the blame on that side of the ball?
I don't know who to necessarily blame. There were some things that I did see that I liked. The one thing that I didn't like, and I don't like looking at the box score, is 127 rushing yards by Joe Mixon and a touchdown. It seems like that's unacceptable because we were used to it last year, but then they go out and they get Michael Pierce back, who, by the way, had 2 sacks and showed that he's more than just a run stuffer. but the run stuffing wasn't there. And I don't know if that comes down to not having Anthony Barr, who is very, very good. And I know there's people that get upset with him in pass coverage. That's not what he's there for. That's not his strong suit. He is very good in the run game, and he also calls plays for this defense. Nick Vigil, I believe I saw this before the game. I think he overtook those duties for Barr in this game. He played well. I think he had a sack and was close to leading I think at this point, I don't even need to mention who led the team in tackles. I think it's fair to assume that Eric Kendricks is going to lead this team in tackles.
It was Vigil
game.
this week.
Was it Vigil?
Yeah, it was Vigil.
Interesting. I didn't know
well,
that.
in solo tackles, I think.
In solo,
yeah, assisted.
Kendricks was with okay, sure. But Vigil had the sack, and he had a couple tackles for losses. He impressed me. I'm trying to think about other plays that stood out to me. It was weird. Ben Lieber brought this up on KFAN earlier this week, just saying how they were putting Danielle Hunter in some 2-point stances instead of 3-point stances. And he thinks that kind of screws with how he plays his style of football because he's a bigger dude, as everyone in Minnesota, all Vikings fans know that Danielle Hunter is just built like a freak. And it limits the leverage that he can get and his explosiveness off the line. The reason why I was so excited to see this 3-4 style, we didn't even get to see in Cincinnati, because the reason why I was excited for it was because I wanted to see Anthony Barr in that role. I didn't want to see Danielle Hunter standing up. I want his hand in the dirt. And that's kind of what Lieber was saying. He's like, it might not necessarily be the biggest deal, but it just seemed weird. And then the sack that he did get, it did come out of a 3-point stance. So that was interesting to me. I don't know who blew the coverage on that last play. It looked like Xavier Woods was kind of running around with his head cut off. I don't know if that was his man or what, but that was ugly, and that kind of sealed the deal for him. But I want to say one thing that I didn't think I was ever going to say about this team in my lifetime, and it's probably going to change, and I'm probably going to kick myself next week because I said this, but I just special teams for the Minnesota Vikings.
Yes, Jack.
How about, when that field goal that was made, Barry had that punt where I was like, is this cameraman like going crazy? Like, why is this still going?
Are you talking about the one in overtime?
Yes.
I remember I said, I was like, well, that's the game. We're punting from inside the 20 or like inside the 30, and he pins them in the 10.
That was insane. God. And I think Harrison Hand had a nice play on kickoff as well. So the special teams was phenomenal.
You didn't even mention the walk-off.
Yes. And of course it comes when the Vikings, their offense and their defense just doesn't look right, and the offense is struggling. There's penalties everywhere. But at least there was one thing that Vikings fans can hang their hats on, something that they have never been able to hang their hats on in the last several years. But it was fun seeing Joseph hit that field goal after they tried to ice him, and he still hit it, because I know Vikings fans were extremely nervous in that situation because no one knew what they were getting throughout all training camp. Was like, yeah, this guy is like going like 7 for 12 today on field goals. Like, okay, that's not great, but when the moment mattered the most, he came through, and then obviously the Vikings kind of fell short in this one. But all in all, I'm going to wrap it up with the same word that I used at the beginning of the segment. It was just a frustrating loss, and it's time to move on, I think. But it's going to be tough to move on if the Vikings continue to lose, if these games are going to get a lot harder.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and take a quick moment to appreciate the chat, and then we're going to go ahead and talk about the Arizona Cardinals, who were going to Arizona Sunday at 3 p.m. or 3:25 Central Time to play them. Jeff Hawthorne says it's going to be a long season. I think it's going to be a long month of September specifically. And then I started kind of chuckling to myself whenever I saw this comment. He says he wants Wyatt Davis at center, guard, or tackle, which those are the 3 spots on the offensive line. So yeah, he wants to see Davis stouting somewhere. I haven't heard any updates on Darrisaw's situation, but I definitely would like to see. I don't know. It's going to be interesting. I think Davis plays center I hope Davis is playing center by the time I'm up there week 5 against the Lions in Minnesota, because Garrett Bradbury did not look good, and that makes me sad because I bought his jersey whenever we drafted him. Let's see. Tom Day says blasphemy Jack Day, talking about the praising the special teams, which who would have thought that would have been the bright spot this week, would have been the special teams unit. And Hannah Hill says, Jack, keep it down. She's trying to watch Netflix. Hannah, I'm going to go ahead and respond foe, Jack. When we can talk about the Vikings special teams being good, I laugh 3 times a week thinking about the time Jack said this season's looking so good. The offense looks good. The defense looks good. I don't know about the special teams, but we're a little excited about that. But let me bring us all back down here and get Samba for a moment. We lost to the Bengals 27-24 in overtime. Hard-fought game, and it's a frustrating one to lose. It's a game that we shouldn't have lost, but maybe we should have. Maybe the Bengals end up going being a fringe wild card team. I don't think they're going to contend for that division, but whatever the case may be, let's move on to Arizona. The Cardinals, I think Chandler Jones is on pace for, and this isn't a joke, 125 sacks this season because he just dominated Taylor Lewan, who's a respectable tackle in the NFL. And this Sunday, he gets to go up against Rashad Hill. Kyler Murray has new toys to play with in A.J. Green and a couple other guys on that offense. Of course, DeAndre Hopkins. This is a big test for the Vikings offense and defense. We'll get into predictions later. I think everyone knows which way we're leaning right now. Jack, I'll let you start us off with the breakdown. What do the Vikings need to do this week to come out with a dub?
Yeah, and I'll start quick with the quick injury report. It's not super long, and it is Wednesday, so this has a lot of time to change, obviously, and hopefully it does change because there's 2 names that didn't play last week that are still on the injury report. Christian Darrisaw is limited, so he's out there practicing at least. So signs are looking good for him. I don't know if this game is going to be the game you want to throw him in for. He hasn't even been practicing the entire summer. You throw him out against a guy that just had 5 sacks, against a guy that has been playing that position in the NFL for several years, and he made him look silly. Anthony Barr did not practice. Harrison Hand did not practice, and Nick Vigil was limited. So the storyline going into this game is how badly are the Vikings going to continue to shoot themselves in the foot? Because that last game, it was, like I said, it was ugly. The false starts, they're unacceptable. The undisciplined actions made by that offensive line and CJ Ham, it got this team off to such a slow start. I think the first 2 drives that they didn't have penalties, they scored touchdowns. And then the other, you just look at like the little ticker on the bottom of the screen. It's like, oh, wow, it's 3rd and 27. I was like, well, this is going to be interesting. They're going to hand it off or dump it off to Amir Abdullah, and we're going to get 3 yards back, and we're going to be punting. So that was frustrating. You have to limit that. And then you're going to have to figure out in some way, you're going to have to protect Kirk Cousins. And I don't like our chances. We didn't even bring up JJ Watt's name, who I think is still capable of getting after the passer. I don't think he is what he once was, but you pair that with Chandler Jones against this offensive line that had, I think, 3 sub-50 PFF grades from last week, which is atrocious. It's not going to be pretty. And then you flip it to the other side of the ball. I think the main storyline for me in this game, and it's just because we didn't get to see him a lot. I know he was on the field, but I think he only got targeted like 3 times. I know the video was circulating of Jamar Chase making the potential future Hall of Famer look a little bit silly. But how does Patrick Peterson come out? Because someone needs to step up and be a vocal leader for this team. I don't know who that's going to be. I know Everson Griffin used to be that guy. It might be a little bit weird in that locker room now if he takes that over again. But someone needs to come out and be a leader. And I feel like Patrick Peterson is in that position to where he is not going to want to go out of that stadium with a loss on Sunday. I can promise you that. He's going to want to beat his old team. And he's going to have his hands full, too, with the wide receivers you just mentioned. I mean, they have studs all across the board at wide receiver. I would kind of hope that he shadows DeAndre Hopkins just because I want to see that matchup. They're not going to not target DeAndre Hopkins. And this is just another game. And I said this on my podcast yesterday as well. This is another game for Vikings fans where they're going to get to watch a complete freak mobile quarterback that the Vikings haven't had in several years. And he has a rocket launcher for an arm. Kyler Murray is, in my opinion, one of the most entertaining quarterbacks to watch. I know he's made mistakes and they haven't been the greatest record-wise in the past several seasons with him, but that doesn't matter. Just watch him on Sunday. He is so fun to watch. I'm excited to be able to watch a full game of Kyler Murray because if I'm remembering correctly, I don't think the Vikings have played Arizona since he's been there.
They have.
Man, is he fun to watch. That Hail Mary from last year, that was just, it's a treat watching him play. And it's kind of a reoccurring theme that we're going to probably bring up several times on this show because with the direction that I'm headed, I'm still not completely off the Kirk Cousins bandwagon, but I'm getting there. And it's going to be a lot harder for Vikings fans, especially the ones that are already on that side of the spectrum, watching quarterbacks just on their schedule this year. I mean, there's a chance they get to see Justin Fields play twice, who they could have traded up and drafted. Kyler Murray, another young mobile quarterback. They just saw Joe Burrow. They're going to have to see Justin Herbert. Russell Wilson, I know he's a veteran that they're all too familiar with, but he's another mobile type quarterback. And I'm not even didn't even bring up Lamar Jackson's name there. So there's a ton of just youthful mobile quarterbacks that are kind of shape-shifting the way the NFL is heading. And the Vikings don't have that. And it's going to make it a lot harder to watch if this team starts struggling and they're going up against these young quarterbacks that are just studs.
Yeah, you didn't even bring up we might get to play Jordan Love twice this year if the Packers offense doesn't get their stuff together because, God, they looked really bad. I had to throw in the little Packers jab because it's the only thing that's – I have to point it out. Technically, right now, the Vikings are in first place because we're the only team in the NFC North that lost to an AFC team, so we have the best conference. So I echoed, therefore, if the playoffs started today, Jack, we're in. We get a home playoff game. But legitimately, what I was going to lead off with was, don't worry, Vikings fans. We just went up against, a young quarterback who was a little hobbled because of the knee, and we got to him. And Joe Burrow was kind of limping a couple of times, so his mobility was limited. We all know Mike Zimmer does an excellent job of handling mobile, scrambling quarterbacks. He's never struggled with it. He definitely didn't get embarrassed and get Anthony Barr put eternally on a poster by Josh Allen his rookie year when we got blown out by them. The joke is, of course, Mike Zimmer's not good against, scrambling quarterbacks. They tend to give him fits because, he does have kind of not an old school style of defense, but he does kind of, he wants his pass rush to get home. And with any defense, if the play breaks down and it goes on for too long, the secondary can only cover for so long. And I think Kyler Murray is going to produce fits for the Vikings this Sunday. At this game, to me, I'm hoping – I don't know if you remember the Rams. No, of course you do. You were at that game, Jack, weren't you, whenever we played the Rams Cousins first year? And it was a big shootout, and that's honestly all I'm hoping for this week because I don't think we're going to be able to contain Kyler Murray. I think he's going to be putting up points. If we can slow him down a little bit, I'd be ecstatic. I don't know that we will. I think that the Vikings secondary is in a bad spot right now. Patrick Peterson is a bright spot, but he's the only one so far. Hopefully we have an emergence of a Chris Boyd or, again, the redemption story of Cameron Danslow maybe. But it seems like we're going to, this might be a week of moral victories for the Vikings. Flipping over to the offensive side of the ball, man, we need a Brian O'Neill story to happen. We need somebody to come in and just start dominating and be really, really good. Because I do think Chandler Jones and J.J. Watt are going to give that line fits. Cousins is not athletic enough to do what Kyler Murray is going to do. Well, even if, Danielle Hunter and Everson Griffin or DJ Wanham are getting pressure, Kyler Murray is so athletic, he's going to be able to elude him a couple of times. So Cousins isn't going to be able to do that so well. I think the offense, because of that, is going to rely on a lot of quick, short passes, and it's going to be a lot of the same. And I fully expect to come on the show next week criticizing the play calling again and talking about how everything was so dink and dunk, and I want to see us push the ball down the field and blah, blah, blah. Get used to hearing that. I feel like I'm going to be saying it a lot this season. But one thing that we didn't do, because this is our first, game show since last season, we didn't give out game balls for the Bengals game. And then, so I'm just going to go ahead and do that really quick. Michael Pierce gets my defensive game ball. And on the offensive side of the ball, I think I would give my game ball to I don't know. Probably
Thielen, probably.
I was going to say Osborne, but Thielen, had 2 touchdowns and 92 yards. Like, he definitely had the best game on the offense.
He's really showing signs of slowing down with his old age.
Yeah, he's regressing.
Did you know that he was a Division II kid on a $500 scholarship?
I heard he didn't get an invite to the combine. He had to go to he had to pay to go to a regional combine. Yeah, but I would give it to KJ Osborne just because I'm quirky like that, and I like to. It's good for the kid. I mean, he comes in to be our punt guy. He's not very good at it, and now he's our number 3 wide receiver, and the fans are excited for him. So, do you have? I'm assuming you would also go with Michael Pierce.
Pierce gets it for me too as well.
I do want to tell this story on the show really quickly, and then we can kind of get into game balls and score predictions and stuff and get out of here. My dad is not. He's not. He doesn't hate Daniil Hunter, but he thinks that we have overrated him significantly. And on that last drive that the Bengals had in regulation, he was like, "This is where Daniil Hunter needs to own his money. Like he needs to get in there and get a sack." And I watched Daniil Hunter just speed rush right around the right tackle and get that sack. And I mean, we went nuts in my house. We were just like, "That's why we want him back. That's why we paid him. That's why we're gonna pay him again." Like we were going berserk. That was a really good moment in a loss. But back to Arizona. Sorry to get off topic. Jack, do you want to do score predictions first or game balls first?
Let's do game balls. I'll give it to you first. You get to pick whatever side of the ball you want. I'll take the opposite. I think we declared what we were going to do before Cincinnati. Should we just stick with that since we never I think I had defense and you had offense. Since we didn't do it, you want to stick with that?
We can do that. I was going to take defense just because I feel like it's going to be tough to find a bright spot on the defense this week. But we can go wherever. I'll take offense. If we're going to go offense, I think that I'm giving it to like Brian O'Neill. No, you know what? I'm giving it to Tyler Conklin because he's going to be chipping Chandler Jones off the edge a lot, and he's going to have to, do a lot in pass protection before he goes out to try and catch balls. Not to mention, I feel like he didn't get used a ton in the offense on Sunday, so I look for Conklin to catch a red zone touchdown and also hold Chandler Jones to 2 sacks, which is good, considering he's coming off of 5. And if he can get that done, then he can easily have my game ball. I do think you could go with any of the receivers, though, because I do think they're going to be busy catching balls on Sunday. But yeah, who do you have on the defense, man?
I think I already kind of talked about this. I don't expect Michael Pierce to be leading the team in sacks after this game. I don't expect Michael Pierce getting home to Kyler Murray because I don't know if you saw that play where I think he ran like 46 yards. I saw some tweet today. He ran 46 yards sideline to sideline before he actually threw the football. And that is something, if Kirk Cousins ran 46 yards on the field, I think everyone in Minnesota would fall off their chair if that happens. So I'm going to give it to the not hometown guy, but the old hometown guy and Patrick Peterson, because like you said, this offense, the Cardinals offense, is full of firepower. And we're going to have to get some turnovers out of the Vikings if they want to have any way of finding success. And DeAndre Hopkins is pound for pound the best wide receiver in the NFL right now, especially after what happened. I still think it's close between him and Devontae Adams. It goes back and forth. But just because of the Packers, if there's Packers fans listening, they already have a sour taste in their mouth, which they weren't expecting either. I don't think the NFC North. I mean, I think it was fair for the Bears and the Lions to both kind of expect losses, but I was not expecting the Packers to come out and lay an egg like they did against the Saints. And Jameis Winston was slinging the football too, so wasn't expecting that. But Patrick Peterson's going to have to step up. They have studs. It doesn't matter if they're throwing DeAndre Hopkins, if it's going to be a resurgent year, and former Bengal AJ Green, Christian Kirk is a speedster. Rondale Moore is another flyer that I think he was out of Purdue. I think he was a second-round pick this year for him, but they are loaded at the wide receiver position, and our cornerbacks room and our D-backs in general didn't look great against Cincinnati, and that's going to have to flip around. They still have a defensive-minded head coach, a defensive backs coach in Mike Zimmer. They're going to have to put a lot of work in this week, and Patrick Peterson said this on his podcast that he does. Good teams do not lose 2 football games in a row. Are the Vikings a good football team? Watch Sunday, and I guess we'll find out then. But Patrick Peterson gets my game ball, maybe finds his hands on a ball once or twice, gets an interception, and just flips the field for the Vikings at least once, because you're going to need that in this game with how I think we both see this turning like kind of a high scoring affair.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I was actually, because if I was going to take defense, I was leaning towards like Chris Boyd, but Peterson is also a really good pick. But you know how I do these game balls. I always pick weird guys. I never just say like, oh, it's going to be Dalvin Cook because Mike Zimmer's going to run him into the ground. Like I picked Conklin this week to be my guy. So, but I would have went with like Chris Boyd, but similar thing where it's like, you know what, the secondary needs to step up. Honestly, like, it's Mike Zimmer that okay, bub, look, was it Dion or was it Zimmer? Who made it? Because, it's like the smaller version of Brady or Belichick, because, your secondary is not looking good since 2017. It's been pretty rough. It's been a rough 4 years now. So, we'll see, man. It's going to be an exciting game. Hopefully, we'll go into score predictions, and I'll selfishly decide that I'm going first just because it'll be able to go a little better with the transition. I think if the Vikings want to win this game, I think they're going to have to bring pressure on Kyler Murray. They're going to have to. I think that offense is set up to make some big plays happen with Hopkins and Green and Christian Kirk and Rondo Moe and just all these. They've just got names out wide. So I think forcing Kyler Murray to get the ball out quick is kind of the key to it, and then make tackles in open space and just bring it down, play solid defense. And also it doesn't hurt if you have a defensive back or an athletic linebacker like Eric Kendricks chasing Kyler Murray down instead of Michael Pierce, who his sack celebration was he went like this on his stomach. Because he's such a big man, instead of having him trying to run down the uber athletic Kyler Murray. So, unfortunately, my score prediction is going to be, I'm going with the Cardinals, and I just haven't decided by how much. I do think it's going to be Arizona, and I'm going to go ahead and say it's going to be 42. That's 42. 42 to, I'm going to say 38. I think the Vikings I'm going to say the Vikings offense shows up. I'm hoping to God they don't get penalized as much, and I hope Kubiak just he says I'm calling plays from the booth. I'm toning Mike Zimmer all the way down, and I'm going out there and I'm running a 2021 going into 2022 offense because I don't want to flame out of this league and be known as the son of a once great coach who couldn't call plays on his own and be a forever quarterbacks coach or whatever the case may be. So I'm hoping he comes out, he calls an aggressive game, and I hope the Vikings realize early on, all right, if we're going to win this game, we're winning it with the offense. This is Cousins has to go out there. He's going to have to throw the ball. We can still run the ball occasionally, but I think this is a week where the passing game has to complement the run. Oh, no, I'm sorry. The running game has to be a complement to the passing game, but the passing game it's the beef. It's the main meal. And the running game is just, the little chives on top of the potato skin, if you will. So, Jack, what's your score prediction?
Yeah, I too have the Cardinals winning this one. I don't think it's going to be quite as high scoring as that. I was looking at both teams probably being in the 30s somewhere. Maybe it's tough because I could see the Cardinals putting up 42 points, and I could see. I mean, it just depends on what team shows up. And I talked about this. We've talked about this. It's the Minnesota Vikings. You truly have no idea what team you're going to get on Sunday. With how they lost in Cincinnati, it could be a complete different team that shows up on Sunday. They could have no penalties. I don't know if that's very likely, especially with how awful it was watching last Sunday, but it could just be complete change from what we saw a week ago. And that's just how the Vikings have been, and that's what's been so frustrating. They're so up and down, up and down. They're not consistently good or consistently bad. They're consistently mediocre, and that needs to change if Mike Zimmer wants to save his job this year. Unfortunately, I don't think that changes in week 2. I have the Cardinals winning 37-31.
All right, so we both have close games. Jeff Hawthorne has put his own little personal score prediction in the chat. He says 38-13, sadly, Arizona. And I think all Vikings fans are picking them to lose this game. I think I told you we were starting 0-2 and then beating Seattle and Arizona. And maybe that's just the, Captain America, I can do this all day, the fighter inside of me. But I don't know. We'll see what happens. Like I said, I didn't want to get too much into the Arizona and the Browns game because I don't want to give away next week's show or anything. So, is there anything else that you want to get off your chest before we get out of here?
I don't think so. I will say this. I've been bashing this team, and we've both been I think most of Minnesota feels this way. It just kind of seems like the season's already started on this trajectory. It's a long season. We're a week into the season. A lot can change. Like I just said, the Vikings can flip the script around, and they could start, if they string a couple wins together, we're going to be having a completely different conversation in a couple weeks. And that's not out of the picture. I wouldn't be surprised if that happened. I wouldn't be surprised if the Vikings did what they weren't supposed to do, like they did a week ago in Arizona, and that's coming out with a win because they're not favored to win this game. That's just the Vikings way, and I can't even question it anymore. It's just the way of life. It's how things happen, and maybe they come out with the win and we're having happy conversations next week. It just doesn't seem likely.
Yeah, honestly, I'm going the opposite way. Where I would
You're ready to start talking quarterbacks, aren't you? That's
man, I am. But I always am after like one loss, and I'm just like, let's do it. Let's draft Desmond Ritter. Let's pull the trigger. But I really haven't even been like looking yet, and it's we'll get there. But I would not.
I
Go
I
ahead.
was I was watching highlights yesterday. I'll selfishly admit that I was watching 2022 draft class quarterback highlights, which again, probably a little bit early on in the season. I'm probably stepping too far ahead, but that's after an ugly loss like that. That's just the only thing to do. It's the Vikings way, like I said.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Always got to be looking forward, especially whenever Kirk Cousins is your quarterback. It's not even the Vikings way. It's just if you have Cousins as your quarterback, I think you're always half the fan base wants him gone, half the fan base thinks he's doing just fine. But I will go ahead just because I'm a gambling man. The line on this game opened at Arizona minus I think 5, and when I was at my sports book last night. It had already moved to 5.5, and I think it will continue to move. I think it's going to move all the way up to -6 for Arizona, meaning that they're 6-point favorites, meaning that a lot of money is coming in on Arizona to win. So a lot of people think Arizona's winning this game on top of just us. So it would not surprise me at all if Arizona is the real deal, because I think they also want to prove that that wasn't a fluke last week against Tennessee. Would not surprise me at all if we lose by 2 or 3 possessions here, and we are, we're pissed coming in, like we're not having a fun show on Wednesday, going into Seattle, and then yeah, we'll see what happens, man. It could be a long first month of the season, but hey, look forward to that quarterback show. No, even if we're 3-1, we're still probably doing a quarterback show. It's tradition at this point. So, yeah, that's all I have. I'll go ahead. I'll hush up so that way you can give the hype speech. Jack, try and get this team, try and get these fans ready to run through the wall after this disappointing loss. We're acting like we just lost the Super Bowl or we went 0-17. We lost by 3 to a good offense, hopefully. And it's week 1 of a 17-week season. Can you pick up the Vikings fans? Can you lift our spirits, Jack?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say this. Upsets happen all the time in the NFL. I think we're going to start seeing more and more upsets. I think it's there's parity in football, believe it or not. If there's basketball fans watching this podcast, there is parity in the NFL. Good teams can lose to bad teams. I think if I was going through like all of the lines and just like looking at which teams beat other teams. It was like, I would not have, if I was in a pick'ems league, I would have had an atrocious week if I would have done that this week. So there is still some positives to take away from that Cincinnati game. There's stupid mental mistakes that can be fixed. That is good news. There's still a lot of talent on paper on this roster. And I think that this team could still potentially surprise some people. I'm not overly optimistic. I've just came out and blatantly told everyone my optimistic Jack is no longer. He's kind of gone. And that goes in more areas of one. It's not just about the Vikings. That's kind of sliding into the Kirk Cousins. I've stuck up to you about Kirk Cousins probably several times on the show. And for the first time in his 4 years or however long he's been here, I'm starting to see that where it's like, you know what, maybe I was wrong. Maybe it's time for me to eat my words and admit that this isn't the answer. And we're going to find that out one way or another this year. We're going to figure out if this is a Kirk Cousins led team, if he can get this team to the playoffs. We're going to find out if Mike Zimmer can flip the script after an ugly loss. And that all starts in Arizona. I think it's a 3:30 game, which is kind of weird. So that's 4:30 your time. But I'm looking forward to watching some good football. Like I said, it's going to be fun getting the chance to watch Kyler Murray. He's a treat to watch. It's a complete different style than what the Minnesota Vikings fans are used to. And I think they're going to be a little bit hungry for a quarterback like that after watching this game, especially because he's so mobile. And on top of it, I think in terms of the mobile quarterbacks that are extremely mobile and frequently use their legs, I think he has one of the better arms out of those guys that are true traditional running quarterbacks. He has, like I said earlier, he's got a rocket launcher for an arm. He's got some good touch. He can deliver strikes with pressure, something Vikings fans are starting to get extremely frustrated about. But like I said, it's a long season. There's a lot of football left to be played. Maybe you and I are overreacting and the Vikings completely change it and we're having a better conversation next week, but that remains to be seen. We'll be back next Wednesday, and most importantly, Skol as always.